If it makes you money or brings us happiness, you'll find it right here. This is The Purple Tie Show. Welcome to The Purple Tie Show. I am Robert Martin.
And I am Blake Singleton. And I'm going to go ahead and apologize for the coughing that's going to happen during this show.
Unimpressed.
Guys, it is cold enough outside to drink.
Fresh baked lies. I'm drinking coffee. It's cold outside.
That's what I'm saying. Normally I drink
cold
coffee, iced coffee, but this is wonderful hot coffee, and it's finally cold enough outside to drink it without feeling like you're going to sweat.
Hey, it's 68 degrees in here. I haven't turned on the heat, air conditioning, nothing. And I mean, it's just, we get like a week of this in Alabama.
Yeah. You realize that we're officially old men talking about the weather?
Oh, my God. I got the ache in the bone. It's true. My elbow kind of hurts. So,
got the ache in the bone, ladies
and
gentlemen, and everybody in between.
So I don't want to like dominate this with the Apple Keynote that was previous this week because I feel like everybody's beat it to death. But I do want to talk about a couple things.
Well, now, we actually recorded next week's podcast before this one. So
yeah, I was trying to get a jump on it.
Yeah, we mentioned this podcast in next week's episode.
So now we got
to...
So now we got to like juggle them around. So this one's first, and then that one's later, and it's just...
It's going to be good, though. You need to listen to next week's podcast. It's really good.
It'll be good. We did some trash talking. So so they released and I love the fact that they said... In the midst of the keynote, they were like, oh, yeah, by the way, 12.1 dropped. Yeah. And, like, it was like they glazed over it, right? It was like, it dropped. It's got some new emojis and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, whatever.
Yo, that, I don't even remember what the new ones are. But...
The little sad eyes guy.
Oh,
I'm going to call him sad eyes guy. That's like, man, if you want to feel pitiful for somebody, just send that. And they're just like, oh, I made him sad.
Like puppy dog eyes.
Oh, yeah, it's crazy. It's so...
They released 70 new emojis.
70,
and I remember you upgraded and went ahead and installed it on your iPad and your iPhone, and then you text the highly unpaid intern with some of the new emojis. He's like, I haven't updated yet. It's just a square with a question mark in it.
You make him sound so bad. So he was, I was like...
That's because I can't do his voice. I can't remember what he sounds like.
Kind of... Jacob, you're kind of nasally. So, but he's like, it's just a square with a question mark. I was like, sounds like you need to get on it. He's like, I am. It's stuck. Maybe it'll push through tonight. And I'm like, sounds like you're running last year's hardware to me. But because I got to give him crap. So he's a sheeple too. He'll admit it.
Yep.
Most times. So I want to address the before we get too far into like how and why and what they released and all that stuff, I really want to talk about the iPad Pro. It was kind of the biggest announcement, and I got really super ticked off because I was watching a YouTube video of a guy, reviewing the iPad Pro. He didn't have one, but he had an opinion about it.
Yeah, he was reviewing the keynote. He was reviewing the release.
So, and he's like...
I know.
Is
that... Are we really to the point that we can review keynotes? I mean, I guess if you can review TV shows and movies... And,
you can... I
guess you can start reviewing trailers for movies as well.
I'm going to start reviewing just random people walking down the road. I'm going to be like, hey, come here, let me review you. Oh man! So
see, I feel like we do that though. Like
it's called
that
judgment.
Shirt with those shoes.
It's called judgment.
It is. It is totally judgment.
Oh man! So he's like, oh well, the iPad is for the 1%, and I guess I'm not part of the 1%. And I'm like, okay, hold up, back up, slow down. You are just being. I mean, you got your feelings hurt because of whatever, and you're just being a crappy reviewer at this point.
I don't think so. I think that what he was doing was pandering for views. You've got a lot of people out there that really like the iPad. the new one, and he wants to be that dissenting review. He wants to be the opposite side of the coin so that he gets just as many views as the people that are like praising the iPad.
Like Vector and the people that are, sheeple as well.
Vector is, I don't know that the guy that runs Vector is all that balanced as far as opinions for Apple goes, because he'll have some bad stuff to say occasionally.
But usually it's like,
normally it's straight to the bottle.
So,
it's just sucking on that Apple bottle.
So and then there's a dude that's like hardcore. Can you not do that? But there's a guy that's hardcore Android who's like, oh yeah, Apple did the blah blah blah. Oh, you mean the thing that Android's had for 3 years now? Yeah, they just perfected it and get off of it. And,
that's what Apple does. If you listen to our previous podcast, not the previous series, we talked several times about how Apple never invents.
They just make it better.
Yes.
Yeah. It's like, okay, they didn't build the mousetrap, but they made it better.
They didn't build the mouse.
Yeah, they didn't build the mouse, but they
perfected it.
Yeah, they perfected it. So this new iPad has pencil support, and pencil doesn't really plug into the bottom anymore. It clips to the side and wirelessly charges, which is...
I am super upset that mine doesn't do that.
I'm a little
perturbed. So I got my iPad Pro just a couple of months ago, and I've drawn on it basically every day since then. And the Apple Pencil charges for crap. If you plug it into a wall charger, it takes 2 hours to fully charge. But if you plug it into the lightning port of an iPad, that thing will charge in no time.
Yeah.
I mean, minutes, and it will be fully charged. And
it's quick.
It is quick, but you also have to. I want you to visualize what do you think that is? 6 inches? 6-inch long pencil sticking out the bottom of your iPad.
I mean, it feels like disaster waiting to happen. It really does.
It does.
And the new one, it just magnetically clips and charges wirelessly. But what blows me away, and this guy was, just hating on it tremendously, that it is faster than 90% of all the other mobile computing devices out there. According to Apple.
I think according to Apple, it's faster than 90% of computers. Just total.
Total computers?
Well, you got to think.
Portable. They did use the word portable.
Well, laptops are portable. I don't know.
That's true.
But I don't remember exactly what the specs are, but I want to say that they're the A12X Bionic that they've got running this thing now has like 6 or 8 cores, something like that.
I think it's 8 cores.
That's faster than the previous laptop that I had.
Yeah.
It has more cores at least.
Well, and
it had just as much. Well, it doesn't have that much RAM. It's only got 6 gigs of RAM.
I don't know. I know you can get it up to a terabyte of storage space, which is insane.
Ridiculous. My current laptop is the first computer I've ever owned with a built-in terabyte hard drive.
Solid state.
No, period. I've never had a terabyte hard drive inside a computer.
But here's the thing, though. You're able to run full-blown Photoshop. So that means...
Which is amazing.
Very large PSD files. Because it is full-blown PSD files.
That PSD file, I found out later, it was like 3 gigs.
Wow.
Now, my laptop, which is running a 8-core processor, it's 16 gigs of RAM, and it's got a NVIDIA 1050 Ti or something like that for the video card. That thing chugs when you get up over just a few hundred megabytes. Yeah. But this thing was a 3 gig PSD file.
Yeah, it was like a 9-foot by 9-foot picture.
It was gorgeous.
Was just, you zoom in, zoom out. I mean, it was smooth. Apple has created something that for a pro user, for someone who uses when they function. But when people that use Photoshop and those type programs on the iPad still blows me away. Like that's just, I've got Adobe Sketch and a bunch of other stuff on my iPad, and I'm just blown away every time I start using it. I'm like, man, we are so far into the future of technology that it's pretty freaking amazing. So if you look at it for what it is, and stop being mad at Apple, and stop being, just look at technology for what it is. Whether Dell makes it, Apple makes it, HP, Samsung, it doesn't matter. Just look. Microsoft, I almost forgot about them. It's because I'm a sheeple. But think about technology as a whole, of where we've come from and where we're going. Mm-hmm. And be amazed at the journey instead of being mad about the person that's taking us there, or anything else that, what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I do.
I just want to make sure that I'm not, babbling over here. I mean, I'm kind of babbling.
No, you don't have to stop it. You can just leave it going. I want to look up something real quick.
You're gonna have to adjust the audio in this too.
That's fine. I've started adjusting it anyway. Adjusted the last one that I made. So you were the journey, right? The first iPhone wasn't released until 2007. That's just 11 years ago.
It's hard to believe that we've been through that many iterations of the iPhone. I remember I wanted an iPhone so bad that we had a broken one come in to the shop, and I ordered, I could have went and bought a new one for what I put in parts in this thing. And it was old and outdated, and the person was just like, yeah, I'm upgrading to the new one. I have no use for this here. It's broken. If you can fix it, you can have it. And I was like, ooh.
That was like the second generation too.
It was the 3GS was 3G. It wasn't even GS.
Yeah, so that was the second iPhone or something.
And I was like, oh my God, I love it so much. And then I was like, I've got to go buy a 4. I have to go upgrade.
Yeah. So the iPhone came out in 2007, and then the iPad was released in 2010. So the iPad is only 8 years old. And in the time, the first inkling that I ever had of a tablet, not counting the garbage convertible laptops from back in the early 2000s. Oh man,
those were so bad.
Because the very first tablet I ever interacted with was a convertible laptop. It was a Toshiba, and you had to have a stylus, and it was running Windows XP Tablet Edition.
That was a disaster.
It was. You had to deal with them at that back whenever you were doing
work for a
doctor, and you were doing all of their computer stuff, and he was hell bent on touch computers. I have to have these. Yep. I have to be able to write my notes into the computer, and it never worked.
I'm like, Doc, your handwriting, no one can read it. Why do you want to scribble on a screen?
Yep.
But we've come just a tremendous distance in 11 years.
Yeah, the first proto version of the iPad that I ever heard about was from the founder of TechCrunch, and he was going to create this. He said he wanted something that he could have in his lap that would let him surf the internet and watch Netflix and just be a consumer product. And he hired a whole bunch of hardware people to create this thing, and he called it the Crunch Pad. And that never worked out, and then you had the whole Android, because he was going to be running Linux, just a straight-up version of Linux on this tablet. And then right after that happened, Android launched, and we got our very first G1s with the trackballs and the slide-out keyboard and everything.
Yeah, those were...
I loved them. I thought it was the most amazing thing ever. Being able to touch the phone screen and interact with it, it was amazing to me. And then the iPhone came out. And then a couple of years later, the iPad came out. Apple did not invent tablet computing.
No.
But they took this really raw idea from this, obscure Android Linux tablet and made it into something usable. The CrunchPad tablet prototypes that he posted online were like 4 pounds. You know? I mean, it was essentially like a monitor.
And we're not talking about 4 pounds as in British currency. We're talking 4 pounds as in 4 pounds of weight.
As in a small dog.
4 pounds of lima beans.
Yes. In the South. That's how we measure things.
We measure stuff in lima beans. So beyond that, you know, the iPad Pro is, you know, it costs as much as a small computer.
It costs more.
It's expensive.
It's a premium computer price.
If you get a terabyte, it's expensive. But you have to think about this. You have a terabyte mini computer that weighs a pound that you're able to take with you literally everywhere you go. I mean, it's like the size of a piece of... the 10.1 smaller than a piece of paper, and the new 12 is about the size of a notebook piece of paper.
I am still waiting for them to do what you and Jacob were talking about, where you attach it to a dock, and that's just your computer.
Yeah.
Of course, it's USB-C now, so it can technically do that.
I feel like it's coming. I feel like, you know, they're really going to shine when they're able to... You use the iPad, it's running iOS, 14 or whatever, and then you plug it in, and suddenly it's running Mac OS X, or Mojave's next desert thing or whatever, right? But I think that's where they're gonna like blow everybody else out of the water, and I feel like, they're building their own, that A12X Bionic. Everybody's like, oh, when Apple builds their own chips, and me and Jacob were talking about this, they had the PowerPC and they went to the Intel. Well, now they need efficiency, right? So if they build this new chip for the MacBook or a new chip for the MacBook Air, or something, I feel like the MacBook Air is headed that way, where the MacBook Air will have a Apple produced chip inside, and your pro level stuff will have Intel chips.
I can see that happening, but I don't think they'll diverge on hardware. I think once they move one thing over to...
They'll move it all.
Because that's how they do. They're not going to have multiple hardware. They're not going to have multiple types of processors to cover.
What you're saying is Apple never half-asses anything. They either go all the way or no way. Okay, that was a stretch, but
it's gotten a lot better. Man, I wish we could time travel back to the 90s when Apple was just a garbage computer company.
I would invest every dollar I had.
The Newton. Anytime you want to talk about a failed product, somebody talks about the Apple Newton, and it was a tablet.
Yeah.
It was a PDA, a personal digital assistant, and it could do calendar, and it could do contacts, and it could do stuff before the internet that you could carry around in your pocket.
Yeah, basic stuff. But here's the thing: we talk about business and failing business and businesses that thrive. If Apple gave up after their first, failure, because a lot of people, they start a business that fails, and then they're just like, well, that failed, back off to work.
Yep.
And, my first company didn't succeed. I didn't build my first $1 million company for, 15 years.
Yep.
I struggled forever, and then, the first company was built, and then that company transitioned into another company, and then once that company got started, I was like, you know what? I'm bored. I'm going to go build another one. And
one of these days, I want to do a show where we talk about all of the little side venture companies that we've made throughout the years. But I don't think today is Apple Keynote day.
Is not the day. This is we're not going to talk about the candle company. Yes, there was a candle company, and things like that today. I do want to talk about the Air, the MacBook Air.
Okay.
Right? So, it is a really... Like, I have a MacBook Pro.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of want a MacBook Air now. Like, I don't even know why. Because it's so ultra portable.
We talked about this for a little while a couple days ago, and this is basically Apple's version of a Chromebook.
Yes.
Because it's super duper tiny, it's super duper light, it's got really low specs as far as processing power goes. You're not going to play games on it or anything like that. It is just a MacBook to surf the internet and watch Netflix.
And get schoolwork done, stuff like that.
Yeah, type up schoolwork and stuff like that.
It's a Chromebook. If a Chromebook could run a full-fledged version of an operating system.
It's funny you should mention that because there's talk that the Chrome operating system, Chrome OS, is going to be transitioned into a more offline experience instead of requiring the internet to do basically everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that Google is going to start transitioning phones off of Android to run Chrome OS.
That's going to be an interesting...
Well, they just had that big deal where they had to pay a whole bunch of money in Europe for antitrust because of Android, including things like the Google Play Store and all of the Google apps that come preloaded on the phone, Gmail and Chrome and stuff like that. And they said that it was a antitrust situation similar to what Microsoft was doing back in the mid-90s with Internet Explorer. And they had to pay a bunch of money, and now they're having to charge. Used to, you could get all this stuff for free. Android was free to put on people's phones. But now they're having to charge to put Android on phones. And it's probably something minimal, like $8 a phone or something like that. But if you produce 4 million phones...
That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
Well, so I could see Google making I could see them making the Pixel run on Chrome OS. I could see that happening. But this isn't about Google. This is about Apple and their decisions. So let's talk about the Mac Mini for a minute, because the Air, will just glaze over that. It's an updated Air. It's got some liquid crystal.
It's got a liquid crystal
thing.
retina display, or a liquid retina display. It's got a faster processor. It's got more memory.
Well, they finally have a retina display in the MacBook Air, which the MacBook Air LCD before was garbage. I mean, it looked bad. It was all pixelated.
It was.
But it was a low-end MacBook.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's got a retina display. And the one thing I can give Apple, for all the crap that we give them, their displays are beautiful.
Yes.
Absolutely gorgeous.
Well, I'm not going to argue the fact that they don't have great hardware. What I'm going to argue is that it is not priced for everyone.
No, it is not. And if you want
because even their low-end MacBook Air is something like $800, I think. Or $1,000.
I think it's a little more than that. I think it's $999.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. If you compare, okay, the way I look at this is Ford and Lincoln, right? They're both the same company, right? Mm-hmm. So you could get a Ford Crown Victoria for, let's just, say $10,000. It was the exact same car as the Mercury Grand Marquis or whatever, but the Grand Marquis was more money. Not because it was a Mercury, but because it had a little higher quality, a little more premium. It was a little more premium. Then you take that and go to a Lincoln, who is all made by Ford.
Yes.
A Lincoln Continental. All it is the frame of a Ford Crown Victoria with the air conditioner, puts out the same cold air as the Ford Crown Victoria, but it's more money.
I equate this to the old BMW story that I heard, or it was an old Mercedes. Dude buys an old Mercedes that does not run. He paid $3,000 for it.
Mm-hmm.
It was a 2003 model. He fixes it for very little money, so now he has a functional 2003 Mercedes. But it's still better than his 2016 Toyota because it's got double pane windows, it's got heated seats, it's got all of these premium features that were put into it 13 years prior. It's an old high-end car, but it's still better than his brand new car that he bought for less money comparatively, like if they'd compared prices at the time. So that's what Apple is. Apple is your premium product.
I'm sitting here looking at your Dell, and it's got aluminum.
Yes.
On the bottom.
And the back of the screen.
And the back, but it's not a unibody design where it's milled from a single slab of aluminum. It's got carbon fiber up top, but it's not. But it squeaks. Whenever you put your wrist on it, it still squeaks sometimes. The trackpad. Apple has absolutely, beyond a shadow of a doubt, killed this trackpad.
This is by far the best Windows trackpad I have ever used. It is as close to a Mac trackpad that I've ever had on a Windows computer. It's got the gestures. It's got you can double tap. You can tap with two fingers to get a right click. I mean, it's
good, but it doesn't feel like if you take your fingers.
This is also a mechanical trackpad.
It is.
And the one that you've got on yours is a haptic trackpad.
Right.
So it doesn't
nothing
actually
moves or clicks. If you power it off, it doesn't do anything.
It is an inert piece of metal.
But if you power it on, it has force touch and all that. So Apple's really pushed that technology to the next level. Now you pay for it because that trackpad by itself is like $150.
Yep.
I mean, it's expensive. But the feel of that glass trackpad, because that top layer is glass.
Yeah.
And the feel of it is just super smooth, and it's a premium piece of equipment. And so I feel like that's what they're going after. And then they do something like the Mac Mini, where we've talked about this. You can upgrade the RAM in the new one. It's all milled out of a solid piece of aluminum. And the recycling project. Let's not, we'll talk about that
in a second.
But it's milled out of a solid piece of aluminum, and upgrade the RAM, but you can't touch the hard drive.
The last fully upgradable, and I use air quotes for that because really there were only two things you could upgrade in it. But the last fully upgradable Mac Mini was released in 2012. You could change the hard drive and you could change the RAM.
You could change out that CPU.
In the original, or in the 2012 Mac Mini?
Yeah, you pop 4 screws out of it, pull the heatsink off,
and you can swap out
the CPU.
That is insane.
Mm-hmm. I'm betting that the new one, since it's using an Intel processor, you can do that as well.
That surprises me because even when we were building cheap computers back in the early 2000s, you could buy those boards with the soldered on chips.
Oh my God, those are such a disaster.
They were a disaster, but I mean, they were inexpensive.
They were cheap. They were really,
all you needed at the time were cheap builds.
Yeah. Well, oh God, that's a story for another day. So, but we talked about the hard drive thing, and Apple's reasoning behind soldering the memory and the hard drive and everything else to the board is that it builds a more stable computer, blah, blah, blah. So you take the MacBook Pro. It's got the hard drive soldered to the main board. It's got the memory soldered to the main board. And they say that it is because Apple laptops are meant to be thrown in a backpack and not worried about and just go, right?
Yep.
Now, so you don't have a way to accidentally knock the RAM loose. You don't have a way of accidentally knocking the hard drive loose and all this other stuff. So I guess they build these things for, children to go throw up and down the hallway and it still work.
We did tell the story previously about Jessica pouring hot wax on hers.
It worked for many years after that.
It worked for many years after that, but I mean, come on. Here's the thing. I have owned probably a dozen laptops in my life at this point. I have never, in those 15, 20 years of owning laptops, had one that the RAM popped loose or the hard drive popped loose.
True.
Or the processor or anything.
True.
If something died on that laptop, it was the entire laptop.
Well, and then we talked about this morning. That's what actually prompted us to just go ahead and knock this out was, I have background in electronics, and a memory module that is clipped into a socket, one, requires more space because now you have to put a socket on the main board. Two, can't be as efficient as it would be if it was soldered directly to the main board because you've got clips and pins and that sort of thing holding it in place.
Yeah, you described it to me as if you've got a RAM that's in a slot that's clipped in. It is a piece of metal touching another piece of metal physically, just pushed up against one another. But if you solder it, it is then connected. It is a single piece of metal. So
then it's got to be more efficient, so it doesn't use as much battery power because it is connected. So, and their big thing about the MacBook Air was all-day battery life.
And I get the stuff being soldered to the MacBook Air. Like I said earlier, it makes sense whenever you've got something that's less than an inch thick.
Yeah.
Total. Closed total, including monitor, this entire system is less than an inch thick.
You say less than an inch. I think this thing's like a half inch?
Or 3/4 or something like that. Yeah.
No, it's smaller than that. I think
it's super duper tiny.
Super tiny. But so I see their thought process behind, soldering stuff because you don't need sockets, you don't need adapters, you don't need, and you brought up the point of the M12 or the M2 socket for the hard drive.
Yeah, I just learned about the SSD variations just a couple of months ago.
Yeah, so you've got, M tab, T tab, too many tabs. But you've got a hard drive put into a socket that is just wires pressed against wires.
Right.
So that's going to be less efficient than just putting it on the main board. You've got...
They also added a fingerprint reader.
They did add a fingerprint reader. I forgot about that.
I did too.
So that was... And the other thing that you have to think about is Apple really pushes their security. They're like, the T2 chip. No one knows what the T2 chip is, but it's for security. Well, if your hard drive is literally mounted to the main board, encrypted with the T2 chip, right?
Right.
Then your data is 100% secured.
I couldn't find it. I was looking for the thickness, and they went through all the other stuff. And even though in the keynote she was really keen on pointing out exactly how thick it was, I couldn't find it. I did find out that it's 2.75 pounds.
That's really almost 3 pounds. That's not bad.
And on the page, it mentions that all-day battery life 3 times.
Yeah, well, they're really proud of it. They should be.
But you're right. Nobody knows what that T2 chip does. I don't even know what that T2 chip does.
So your data is encrypted to the hard drive through the T2 chip. So technically, if you took the hard drive off the board, you couldn't get the data off of it because of the T2 chip. So swapping hard drives and keeping that data encryption may be an issue. I don't know. I'm not the engineer who built it,
That goes towards exactly what we were talking about earlier today whenever we were comparing the Apple products to video game systems.
Oh, yeah. And then I shot a hole in it.
Well, I mean, I wasn't trying to say that they were. I was just saying that Apple products are moving more towards the appliance end of things, where I'm not saying that it's cheap and you can, it's a commodity. You can just swap it out at any time because Apple products are not cheap.
No.
But you've got you can't upgrade anything on almost anything.
Well, okay, so let's take this appliance thing. I can buy I was going to say I can buy a cheap refrigerator, but that's not true. Refrigerators are not cheap. Yeah, so I can buy a plain white double door refrigerator side-by-side thing for $1,000, right?
Right.
Or I can get a stainless steel double door with a freezer drawer with water in the door with, crushed ice and for $5,000.
Right. What I was saying was it doesn't matter what kind of fridge you buy. You can't buy a better compressor for it.
Well, you can't buy
and upgrade the compressor.
It doesn't get any colder. If it does, it becomes a freezer.
I'm saying, like, if you could buy a more efficient compressor or something, it's not like you can just detach the one that's in the back and attach a new one. It's not an upgradable product.
It's not user upgradable. Apple has built refrigerators. But that's and no one complains about that.
Right. Because they were never presented with the option.
Right. And I think that's part of we've said it I've said it for years and years and years and years. It's super, 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 super easy to add something later. But if you take something away, people lose their bleep.
Right.
And
lose their crap.
So, same way with prices. You can always lower prices. I know, right? I was really sad. I looked, and of course, I'm drinking my coffee out of a mason jar. We're in the sale. But if you have a really high price, and this is a business tip. So if your prices are high, and you feel like they're high, if everyone says no, your prices are probably too high. But if everyone says yep and buys it, your prices are probably too low, right? You can get a little bit more out of that. So I feel like Apple's kind of in the same boat as raising prices. Anytime you raise prices, people lose their crap.
They've done nothing but raise prices, though. They've never reduced the price of anything.
No, and nothing ever goes on sale.
Right.
Every once in a while, you can find an Apple product at like Staples or Best Buy or whatever and get something off or a discount.
I want to side tangent into this because we've been talking about the Mac Mini.
Here we go.
No, it's not that far off. We've been talking about the Mac Mini. We've been talking about upgradability. We've been talking about the new one coming out, right? They announced it on Wednesday, October 31st.
Oh
30th,
my God! This is
Tuesday.
I know where you're going with this.
They announced it on Tuesday, October 30th. You can pick it up as of the recording of this podcast. You can pick it up the 7th, which is what, next week?
Yeah, like Wednesday or so.
We had to go somewhere, and I don't remember what it was, but you were like, I wonder if they have last year's model in the store. I'll just go pick one up. And I said, I don't know. I'll call. I called our local Apple store. They told me that they were out of Mac Minis. Now, we've been looking at getting a Mac Mini now for a couple of weeks.
And you could have went and picked one up the day before this keynote. I checked.
But you can't now. They have pulled the Mac Mini from the store.
Yep.
So, God knows how many Mac Minis are actually in that store. But what happens to those? Do they get pulled and churned up into Apple announced the new aluminum alloy that they created for their new MacBooks.
I want you to think about that for just a second. Apple created their own alloy.
Yeah, their own metal.
Their own aluminum alloy so that they could recycle the aluminum that they used in the process of making the iPad.
Mm-hmm. Or MacBook or whatever it was.
Into their other products.
I theorized that these other MacBooks...
We hypothesized.
Whatever. Anyway, I said that they take the Mac Minis and they shove them in a warehouse somewhere, and then whenever a Mac Mini, user comes into the Apple store and says, my Mac Mini doesn't work anymore, they say, oh, we'll get you a new one. And they just pull one off the shelf from that warehouse and give them a new one.
It becomes brown boxed.
Yeah, it becomes brown boxed. But
I hypothesized that what they do is they use them in their, because Mac Minis are notoriously used for server farms.
Yes.
They're rack mountable, they sit them on the side, and they just stack them as far as the eye can see, and they use them as, render farms and all this other stuff. And then I made the joke that Apple is setting up a gigantic Bitcoin mining operation with the Mac Minis. And then I realized that they're a trillion, billion, majillion dollar company. Majillion.
Yep.
Majillion's the next layer.
It's new.
So, majillion dollar company, they don't need to be mining no Bitcoins.
Yep. Brazilian dollar company.
Brazilian. So, and then you hypothesized that they go to,
there's
their distribution refurbished company that
there's a couple
sells
of warehouse companies that sell old Macs or warehoused Macs.
And, I'm sure that the other sheeple of this world would say that, like all good Mac products, they're like dogs. They just go to heaven. So, everyone in heaven gets a free Mac. Well, but seriously, what did they do with them?
What do they do with the old Macs? I mean, I'm sure that Best Buy still sells the previous model and stuff like that, but they don't put them on sale.
No, well they can't.
Apple doesn't allow them to sell them.
Well, Apple would go in there with one of them beating batons and just beat and they'd be like, "Well, what's this? This is a MacBook that's on sale. We're just going to beat this display until it doesn't exist." So, what do they do with them? And I don't know. You don't know. No one knows. It's kind of it's kind of like the Google algorithm. No one truly knows the algorithm.
Yeah.
However, we did have a client that jumped from, I'm really super proud of this. We jumped from like page.
I don't even remember when we started working on this. It had to have been 3-4 weeks ago. I guess.
It's been about 30 days, and we moved from like page 4 or 5 to page 1 to slot 4, and then overnight we moved from slot 4 to slot 1.
Yep.
And became the first result, and and it was a simple on-page tweak, which was amazing in and of itself. But so I like the fact that the Mac Mini is small, compact. You could put it, like I wanted one to put in my theater area so that I could use it to have full-blown web browsing on the TV.
Yeah, I mean,
or if I wanted to open up, InDesign or something, I could do that and use the TV.
Right.
But I'm not paying $1,200 because that's what it would cost. The one that I want,
to get a new one, it would be $1,200, and you would get a part-time computer out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not in the theater, but I mean, I usually go chill out in the theater, almost nightly, but it's not every night that I want to work
every night. Yeah,
and sometimes I just want to veg and watch YouTube.
Sometimes, well, yeah, but as it sits right now, I know you've got an Apple TV in there, and you can AirPlay your iPad up to the Apple TV,
or my MacBook Pro,
or your MacBook Pro, or whatever. But a lot of people are probably thinking, "You've got a laptop. Why don't you just take the laptop?" But do you know how tangled that laptop is with cables and hookups
here's
on
the
your
thing.
setup
So
at the office?
My MacBook Pro has 4 USB-C ports, and that's it. Well, 4 Thunderbolt ports, and that's it. So my charger's in one. My external 1 terabyte solid state's in another one. And then I have an adapter plugged into the other 2, driving 2 separate monitors.
Yep.
And like a ton of other stuff. And so my work setup is my MacBook Pro and 2 like 27-inch monitors. I can't work without that. Like I literally become unproductive the minute I unplug that thing.
I don't think people realize how necessary those additional monitors are, especially for like I do the creative stuff, and I'm running Windows 10 Dell XPS 15. I've got a single USB-C on one side, along with an HDMI port and a standard USB port, and that drives. My USB-C drives one additional monitor plus all of my peripherals.
Yeah.
And then I've got another monitor plugged directly into my HDMI port because whenever I plugged in, I've got a dock, and whenever you plug both monitors into the dock, because there's a spot for it.
Yeah, it's supposed to use. I bought it for my MacBook,
and it didn't work.
And then you used it, and it kind of works, but the second monitor flickers.
Jitters, yeah.
Jitters.
Yeah, whenever it's like whenever you are since you don't play games, you've never seen this, but whenever you get a game that your computer just can't run or your video game system just can't run, you get slowdown. And normally video games run between 30 and 60 frames a second, but slowdown it drops to 10 or 12 frames a second, and you can see like jittery. And anyway, whenever you'd move the mouse across it, it would be like you see the mouse here, then the mouse here, then the mouse here, and it wasn't a smooth motion. It was just like tick, 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 tick across the screen.
See, and you say I don't play. Well, I don't play video games.
Right.
I play business.
Yes.
I make my coin in business.
That's right.
My Bitcoin. But I still really would. But I'm not going to pay that kind of money for a part-time computer.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what it would end up being as a part-time computer. And so my takeaway from the Apple Keynote event is I really wasn't blown away. The biggest thing that blew me away was the new iPad Pro. I like the Face ID. I didn't think I'd like Face ID until I got it on my phone. And it still annoys me at times because I need to turn off like raise to wake or whatever so that it doesn't pick up that I've picked up my phone. Because if you pick it up, it automatically turns on. And if you glance to see what time it is, it just opens. And then your clock goes away and you're like, what time is it? And so it's just, yeah.
But you've got a watch.
Shut up.
Anyway,
you know what? I'm done with you. So I was not.
You know what bothers me about the keynote? They had a section. It was like a 15 or 20 minute section where this lady got up on stage. Her name's Angela, and she talked about Apple Today. And it's all about it's all about the extended learning projects that they have going on at the Apple stores that are free. You don't pay for them. You just go and attend these classes.
And they teach people how to draw on the iPad Pro. They teach people how to use different programs.
Right, record music, do painting, all this other stuff. And it was really impressive. And nobody has talked about it. Nobody.
That makes me upset because you don't see... I mean, and maybe it's not free. Maybe you do have to.
They made it sound like it was free. I've never been to one.
Show notes.
Yeah.
But there's something to be said that, and I know why they do it, because if they get you in there and you don't have a pencil and you see how great it is, and they're going to sell you a pencil. You're going to find a way to buy a pencil.
Yeah.
So I see why they do it, I think their reasoning behind doing it is really from the heart. They want to
help the community. They want to help people be able to do the things that they want to do.
They want to encourage people to be creative,
right?
And they want people to use their products to do it.
And I was genuinely blown away by how much stuff they've added to it. They've got the photography course, the drawing and painting course, the music course. They've got a lot of stuff going on, and all you hear about are these,
they're overpriced. Well,
these stupid people that are complaining that the iPad's for the 1%.
I think that's a great place to say, find us online at purpletieguys.com, at Purple Tie Guys, basically everywhere on the web, Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff. We really appreciate you guys listening, and we'll talk to you in the next one.
Bye.